There are a lot of great beefs out there that have entertained us as fans, but I can't think of one beef that is as widely misinterpreted as the Peter and chicken beef. Now, before I even get started, I have to explain some things about the chicken because, like I stated, he is widely misunderstood. First things first, he has a name. I know you've probably been calling him the chicken your whole life, but his name is Ernie, and I feel like the show not referring to him as Ernie and rather as a chicken guy is a subtle way to paint him as a villain. Next, he is married, which I'll get into during one of their fights in the show. Now, I mention that because I feel like people tend to be on Peter's side when it comes to this issue because they think this chicken is just some evil entity that's sole purpose is to just ruin Peter's life. Wrong, and that couldn't be anything further from the truth. And you'll see why as I explain why Peter is wrong in every single one of the 5 fights they have. Now, to the origins of their beef, this shit started over the dumbest thing you could possibly imagine, an expired coupon. So basically, Peter is asked by a guy in a chicken suit if he would like a coupon, and Peter declines the coupon because of his prior experience with Ernie the chicken man. So now the show puts us in a flashback where we see what went down that day. Peter is at the checkout with the coupon he received from Ernie, but when he tries to apply it to his order, it gets declined. Just a little mistake that honestly probably isn't even Ernie's fault. He doesn't own the supermarket, so he's definitely not making the coupon. He's just a guy outside handing them out to people, probably making a shit wage. So what does Peter do? He sees that Ernie's outside and doesn't even bother asking him for a new one or why he was giving out expired coupons. No, he straight up jumps through the window glass and tackles Ernie. Now ask yourself this question. If Ernie was just playing some evil game to waste people's time on expired coupons, why would he be waiting for Peter in the same spot he gave it to him? And also, just look at his face. He's not getting a kick out of the whole situation. He's just looking at Peter, confused on why he's approaching him so hostile. And even when they start fighting, Ernie is initially trying to get away from Peter, and eventually he gets punched over the ledge and luckily lands on a moving truck. Like, I want y'all to think about that. Peter is trying to off this man over an expired coupon, and that's not even the craziest part. Somehow, fueled by just pure hate, Peter outruns a moving car that's on the highway, and it's not like he just barely caught up to it. Bro's already at the next overpass with time to spare and jumps on the truck to beat Ernie up some more. But hold on, for Peter to even get to that overpass, look how far this man had to travel. There isn't even an overpass in sight, and this is a pretty in-depth view of the whole highway, so he had to go at least a mile to the next overpass to even catch him. So after that, the fighting continues, but not only is Peter bloodlusted, so is Ernie, and they both start duking it out to the death. At one point, Ernie had Peter hanging off the truck, stomping on his fingers with them sharp chicken feet. Then they blow up a whole ship, just no regard for anyone else's life. Then they're both on a helicopter, hanging, and this again is another key moment where you see the difference in these two. Ernie is content with Peter hanging on to him until Peter tries to climb up to him and punch him. Mind you, if this landed, they both are done. Peter isn't holding the helicopter, he's just gripping Ernie's feathers. So a fall from this height would probably be the end for both of them. So like any sane person would do in this situation, Ernie fights back until Peter just starts hammering down body shots. Now me personally, I've never been hit with a fully wound up punch to the liver, and I pray that I never do, because from what I've seen and heard, it is an awful experience. I've heard stories of people peeing blood just from one liver shot. Just the sheer will that Ernie had to have to tank these shots is so impressive. And I keep hammering this point down, but this just speaks to the psyche of these two, at least in this first fight. Peter is willing to end his own life. That means he brings Ernie with it. Just remember that. So they eventually end up crashing into the top floor of an office building and continue fighting, which is really crazy when you think about it. There isn't a grace period or some filler dialogue in between their fighting exchanges. Just landed on a moving car, scrap. On a moving helicopter, immediately time to scrap. Crashes into an office building. Peter immediately throws a 1-2 combo into a headbutt. But again, I want you to pay attention to how this is all framed to make Ernie look like the villain. Peter ends up walking off after bashing Ernie's head in between the printer until Ernie tackles him through the glass. And yeah, you can forget about what I said about them falling to their death from the helicopter, because they fall from the top floor of an office building onto straight concrete. And to make things worse, all 300 pounds of Peter Griffin lands on top of Ernie. But this is where I want y'all to pay attention. Peter, thinking Ernie is dead, walks off into the sunset with this superhero music playing in the background. Then they go to Ernie, who you will see is not only the loser in every one of these fights, but they portray him as the angry villain, hell-bent on revenge. Now before I continue, I think we need to break down the damage that this first interaction did to Ernie. Obviously, he lost the fight. That sucks. But most importantly, he probably lost his job. And I know you're probably like, oh, that does suck.
But like, he's handing out coupons for a living. I'm sure he can find another job.
No, he can't just find another job. The job he was working at the Quahog market was specifically looking for chicken mascots. That is an extremely niche job. And he's not even a mascot. He's a real life chicken. This would be like Victor Wembanyama, for whatever reason, being banned from playing basketball. Yes, he could get another job, but he would stick out like a sore thumb. Like, what is this man's Indeed profile gonna look like? How is he supposed to break down to his employer what his ethnicity is? I could just imagine his employer seeing that he marked down other on the application for ethnicity or race. Then when it's time for an in-person interview, he's like, oh, he's not biracial. He's a whole chicken. Now on the other side, what consequences does Peter face? No arrests, no lawsuits, just gets to walk off into the sunset as the hero to a beef that he started. Just off that alone, I don't know how you could be Team Peter in this situation. He ruined this man's livelihood over an expired coupon. You're not entitled to that discount, and you didn't have to take time out of your day to obtain it. Peter just wanted to fight him, and now Ernie's labeled as the crazy guy. That's nasty work, which leads us to their second fight, which I will admit Ernie initiated. But again, how would you feel if this fat whooped your got you fired from your job? You would most definitely want your get back, and that's what Ernie does. He straight tackles Peter mid-convo, no words have to be said, and they just start running the fade across Peter's neighborhood. And if I'm gonna say anything nice about Peter Griffin, it's how he respects the fair ones. Quagmire and Cleveland are right there, but he never calls on them for backup. And I want you to peep how locked in Ernie is. This is the face of a man who had everything taken away from him. And that's reflected in how he fights, because he's just walking Peter down in the middle of a street, throwing 1-2 combos. Ongoing traffic don't matter. He's just teeing off with cars blowing up in the background. Alright, real shit though, cut the young boy beat. I want y'all to serenade in this moment right now. We already know the beef started over the most dumbest reason ever, but do these guys have any remorse for what is transpiring? There are people having their daily couple walk, and they gotta matrix their way out of some moving cars. Like, this shit is kind of dark if you really look at it. There is a whole school bus, most likely full of children, and it just blew up into smithereens. But like a wise bald man once said, F them kids. And eventually, one of the cars does hit them, and they crash into the windshield. But still, this doesn't stop them. Peter with one hand is punching Ernie, and Ernie with no hand still finds a way to hit Peter. Mind you, they're doing all of this with this sharp ass glass digging into them, and not a thought in the world of if the driver can see the road. These two fighting would basically be the equivalent of Goku allowing Babidi to take over his body in his fight with Vegeta. Like, it gets to a point in this fight, the only time they take a break from fighting is to spam these corny ass emotes. And you know how I mentioned in the beginning of the video how Peter is the aggressor in this beef? Well, the lines may look a little blurred in this fight, but Peter does this one thing later in the fight that he just doesn't have to. But because he's Peter and only cares about winning at all costs, he punches the control system that determines the speed of the boat for the ship that they're on, and leads to this gigantic ship just plowing through Quahog. From pier to airport, this ship just runs through Quahog. That is a level of recklessness and will to win that I hope I never come across in my daily life. But it leads to this final scene where Ernie looks like he has the upper hand on Peter, only to be chopped up by the propeller of a plane. That is some hoe ass shit. And now Peter walks off into the sunset with this winter's theme music playing in the background. And Ernie, who's probably so cut up from the propeller, can't even ball his fist and has to ball up his feet